What if I told you that the single biggest difference between the wealthy and everyone else isn't what's in their bank accounts, but what's in their minds? We obsess over their portfolios, their cars, their lavish holidays, but we are studying the wrong blueprint. The real secret, the untouchable asset, is their psychology. Tonight, we're not going to talk about how to get rich. We're going to do something far more powerful. We're going to learn how rich people think about money. And I want you to forget everything you think you know. Here is the first seismic shift for the average person. Money is primarily for spending. For the rich, money is primarily for building. It is a tool, an employee, a seed. Every single dollar is a soldier in their army, and they deploy it with a mission. While most people ask, what can I buy with this? The wealthy ask, what can this create for me? This is the cornerstone. Money is not the end goal. It is the means to freedom, to options, to legacy. The middle class is often trapped in a scarcity loop. Work for money, spend the money, need more money. It's a circle, and too often, a cage. The wealthy think in terms of scale and systems. They don't just trade hours for dollars. They build or buy assets that work while they sleep. A business, intellectual property. Investments, they understand that your own direct effort is the least scalable commodity. So they focus not on working harder, but on building smarter systems that generate value independently. Now, let's shatter a myth. The wealthy are not reckless gamblers, but they have a completely different relationship with risk. The average person sees risk as a predator to be avoided at all costs. The rich see risk as a terrain to be understood and navigated. They don't avoid risk. They educate themselves to manage it. They know that the so-called safe choice, keeping all your money in a savings account, is actually the highest risk of all over time, guaranteeing the erosion of your purchasing power. They embrace calculated, informed risk as the sort of entry for extraordinary reward. Here's a question that will reveal your financial mindset. When you think about getting ahead, do you focus on your salary or your net worth? For most, it's the monthly paycheck. It's the number on the offer letter. The wealthy are laser focused on net worth, the total value of what they own minus what they owe. Your salary is what you earn. Your net worth is what you keep, what grows. They could care less about showing off a high income. They are obsessed with quietly building a high balance sheet. They buy assets that appreciate. They avoid liabilities that masquerade as assets. Finally, the wealthy view money as a magnifier of their ability to solve problems. They ask, what big problem can I solve? Because solving big problems for a lot of people is where massive value and massive wealth is created. They think in terms of value exchange, not entitlement. They don't expect money, they attract it by being a vehicle for solutions. Money flows to clarity, confidence, and competence in solving meaningful issues. Let us begin with a fundamental imagination. For most, the relationship with currency is transactional and fleeting, a means to an immediate end. It is earned, it is spent, and its journey is linear, its purpose consumed. This is the psychology of scarcity, where money is a finite resource to be managed until depletion. The wealthy, however, engage in a profound paradigm shift. They perceive capital not as a consumable, but as a strategic asset. Every unit of currency, from the single dollar to the significant investment, is endowed with a singular, purposeful identity. It is a soldier. This is not a metaphor of aggression, but one of discipline, hierarchy, and mission-oriented deployment. The critical error lies in sending your financial troops into the field without a command, where they dissipate into the ether of trivial expenses. The sophisticated mind, conversely, conducts a daily review of its forces. It asks not, what can I purchase? But what objective can this unit secure? This soldier, when deployed into a carefully evaluated equity, becomes part of a battalion that holds a position. When allocated to a revenue, generating intellectual property, it goes on active duty, generating intelligence and capturing value. When invested in a skill or a relationship that compounds your own capacity, it becomes a force multiplier. The core distinction is between expenditure and deployment. Expenditure is a loss. It is a soldier lost in action with no return. Deployment is a calculated maneuver where the expectation is not merely the return of the soldier, but the return with captured territory. The dividend, the interest, the capital gain, the new business contract. This is how the affluent build not from a place of frenetic activity, but from a place of strategic patience. Their wealth is not a static pile, it is a dynamic, standing army, where each platoon of assets has a clear directive. One division is tasked with defense, preserving capital. Another is on the offensive, seeking growth. Special operatives are allocated to high-risk, high-reward ventures. The general does not mourn the spending of a soldier. The general laments the wasting of a soldier on a meaningless skirmish that does not advance the overall campaign. This is the hook that should arrest your current financial behavior. Your next non-essential purchase is not a harmless indulgence. It is a mutiny. It is you, the commander, ordering a loyal troop to desert your cause for a fleeting moment of comfort. You are actively weakening your own position. The wealthy mindset is a stewardship of potential energy. It understands that liquidity is not for languishing in low-yield barracks, but for being ready to mobilize when the right opportunity presents itself. The strategic acquisition, the market downturn ripe with value, the seed funding for a venture that aligns with core competencies. This philosophy transforms money from a noun into a verb. It is not something you have, it is something you do. It is active, it is working, it is generating its own successors. The goal is to reach a point of critical mass where the army is so vast and so proficiently deployed that its generated returns exceed your operational costs, your lifestyle. That is the moment of financial sovereignty, where your money works so diligently for you that your own labor becomes a choice, not a necessity. It begins, however, with the solemn recognition of the latent power in every single unit under your command and the courage to assign it a mission worthy of its potential. Consider the most fundamental economic exchange, the direct trade of your finite time and labor for a predetermined amount of currency. This linear model, while providing immediate sustenance, is architecturally flawed for building lasting wealth. It creates a ceiling defined by the number of hours you can physically and mentally contribute, and it directly ties your survival to your daily presence. The affluent engineer their escape from this linear trap by shifting their focus from earning an income to constructing systems, what we might call financial architecture. They move from being the primary laborer to becoming the architect and owner of the machine. This machine is a configuration of assets, processes, and intellectual property designed to generate value and, by extension, cash flow independently of the owner's constant direct input. This is the monumental leap from active to passive or semi-passive income. The hook lies in a stark question. If you were unable to work for the next 90 days due to illness or unforeseen circumstance, would your income streams dry up immediately, or would your automated systems continue to generate revenue in your absence? The former is the reality of the labor for wage model. The latter is the hallmark of the builder's mindset. The machine can take many sophisticated forms. It is the scalable business with delegated management and systematized operations where the owner's role evolves from operator to strategist. It is the investment portfolio carefully engineered across asset classes, equities, real estate, fixed income, crafted not for speculation but for consistent compounding returns. It is the digital asset, the book, the course, or the piece of software that requires an initial investment of creativity and effort, but can then be replicated and sold 1,000 or 1,000,000 times over with negligible additional cost. The wealthy thinker spends their most valuable resources, their focus and innovation, not on the tasks within the business, but on the design of the business itself. They ask, how can this process be documented and handed off? How can this product reach a global market without my personal sales pitch for each unit? How can this asset appreciate and produce income concurrently? This is a shift from tactical exertion to strategic design. It requires an upfront investment far more taxing than mere labor, the investment of critical thought, risk tolerance, and the perseverance to build something that may not pay off for months or years. Most people abandon this pursuit because the linear model offers the quick, certain hit of a Friday paycheck, while building a machine offers only silent construction and delayed gratification. But here is the transformative truth. A well-designed machine operates on a different scale entirely. Your hands can serve one client at a time. Your software can serve 10,000 simultaneously. Your direct labor can command a rate of $50 or $500 an hour. A scalable business system has no such upper limit. The goal is to reach a point of critical automation where the machine's output not only sustains itself, but also generates surplus capital that can be reinvested to build more machines, to fortify the existing architecture, or to fund the owner's vision for their life. This is not about shirking work. It is about redirecting your work to its highest and most leveraged form, the work of creation, of systemization, of legacy building. You are not meant to be a cog, however well compensated, in someone else's apparatus. You are meant to be the engineer of your own. The moment you stop asking, what job should I get? And start asking, what system can I build that serves a need, adds value, and can eventually run without me, is the moment you cease being a tenant in your financial life and become the architect. Let us dismantle a pervasive and costly illusion, the idea of safety. For many, financial security is synonymous with preservation, the avoidance of loss at all costs. This manifests in the quiet, comfortable graveyard of capital known as the low-yield savings account, or in the paralysis that prevents any investment outside of known, familiar confines. This mindset, however, is a sophisticated form of self-sabotage. It mistakes the absence of volatility for the presence of growth, failing to account for the silent, relentless predator of inflation, which steadily erodes purchasing power year after year. The wealthy approach risk not as a binary choice between danger and safety, but as a complex landscape to be mapped, understood, and navigated with skill and intelligence. They operate under a fundamental principle: there is no return without risk. The critical distinction is that they do not gamble, they calculate. They replace fear with education, swapping the question, what if I lose? For the more empowering, how can I position myself to win? They perform rigorous due diligence, analyze historical data, assess market conditions, and consult expert insights, transforming the unknown into the studied. Their investments are not leaps of faith into the dark. They are illuminated steps across a gorge, taken only after they have surveyed the terrain, tested the ropes, and secured their harness. This is the crucial hook. Your so-called safe strategy of perpetual inaction is, in the long arc of a financial lifetime, the single most dangerous gamble you will ever take. It is a guaranteed, slow motion loss. The wealthy understand that risk is not monolithic, it is a spectrum. There is the risk of action, which is visible and acute, and the far more insidious risk of inaction, which is gradual and often invisible until it is too late. They consciously choose to engage with the former to immunize themselves against the latter. This requires a cultivated tolerance for discomfort and a reframing of loss. To the average mindset, a market correction is a catastrophe, a signal to flee. To the strategic investor, it is a potential opportunity, a moment when valuable assets may be available at a discount. They have the emotional fortitude and the reserved liquidity to see not the crashing wave, but the receding tide that reveals treasures on the seafloor. They build this fortitude by starting before they feel ready, by committing capital they can afford to have locked away, and by understanding that volatility is the admission price for the theater of compounding returns. Their portfolio is not a single, fragile egg, but a diversified basket engineered to withstand shocks, where the strong performance of some assets balances the temporary weakness of others. This is not recklessness. It is resilience by design. Ultimately, the affluent embrace risk because they have a clear vision of what lies on the other side: autonomy, generational security, and the capital to solve significant problems. They know that a life spent anchored in the harbor of perceived safety may avoid storms, but it also never discovers new continents. The ship may remain undamaged, but its hull will slowly rot from disuse. They choose to sail equipped with the best maps, a seasoned crew, and the unwavering belief that the horizon holds more promise than the familiar shoreline. The question you must confront is whether you are more terrified of the potential for a temporary loss or the absolute certainty of a future defined by limitations you accepted without a fight. Consider for a moment the public scoreboard by which society so often measures success. It is loud, it is visible, and it is almost exclusively focused on income. The prestigious title, the corner office, the luxury car leased under a formidable monthly payment. This is the theater of earned cash flow, a performance that demands a constant, exhausting show of activity to keep the applause and the payments coming. The wealthy, however, have quietly exited this theater. Their focus has shifted from the bright, flashing marquee of income to the austere, private ledger of net worth. This is the ultimate reframe, moving from a fixation on what flows in to a masterful stewardship of what remains and grows. Your income is merely the raw material, the ore extracted from the mine of your labor and ingenuity. Your net worth is the refined gold you have successfully smelted, safeguarded, and put to work. One is a measure of activity, the other is the measure of true, lasting achievement. The devastating hook lies in this reality. You can have a staggering income and be functionally insolvent, a prisoner to lifestyle inflation and debt servicing, while someone with a modest income, through discipline and strategic allocation, can be building irrevocable wealth beneath the surface. The wealthy are not impressed by a high salary. They are impressed by a high savings rate and a higher asset accumulation rate. They channel the inflow not toward the expansion of their monthly expenses, but toward the acquisition of assets that appreciate or produce income themselves: equities, intellectual property, real estate, private equity stakes. They understand the brutal arithmetic of liabilities, those tempting possessions that drain resources from the balance sheet month after month. The luxurious car that loses 20% of its value the moment it leaves the dealership is not an asset. It is a beautifully engineered liability. The wealthy mindset asks of every potential outflow, will this purchase become a line item in the assets column or the liabilities column? This philosophy cultivates a powerful and deliberate invisibility, while others are busy looking rich, consuming the finest symbols of status. The truly affluent are busy getting rich, a process that often requires foregoing those very symbols in the short term. Their satisfaction is deferred, derived not from the admiration of strangers, but from the silent, compounding growth of their financial architecture. They play a longer, quieter game where the dividends are autonomy and security, not social validation. This is why they can remain unshaken by temporary setbacks in the economy or even job loss. Their security is not tied to a single source of active income, but is woven into the diversified fabric of their net worth. Their goal is to reach a tipping point where the yield from their assets, the dividends, the interest, the rental income, the distribution checks, permanently exceeds their living expenses. At that moment, their labor becomes purely optional. They have won the game not because they have the highest salary, but because they have the strongest balance sheet. So, you must choose your scoreboard. Will you exhaust yourself running the treadmill of earning more to spend more, stuck in a cycle that measures success by your capacity to consume? Or will you redirect that energy inward to the meticulous, patient work of building an empire of equity? Stop asking, how can I make more? Start asking, with far greater urgency, how can I keep more, and how can what I keep work to create more? Your net worth statement is the only financial document that tells the unvarnished truth about your progress from dependence to independence. It is time to make that truth your primary obsession. So I leave you with this challenge. Starting tonight, stop looking at money as currency. Start seeing it as potential energy. See every dollar as a choice. Will it be a prisoner of yours desires or a pioneer of your future freedom? This isn't about greed. This is about geometry. You are moving from a narrow, linear equation of work to spend to an expansive, multiplicative geometry of assets create options. The journey to wealth doesn't start with a market tip or a hot stock. It starts with a cold, hard look at your own beliefs. It starts with a decision to think like a builder, a strategist, a long-term game player. The richest place on the planet is not a gold mine or an oil field. It is the graveyard, filled with ideas never acted upon, businesses never started, investments never made, all buried with people who kept the mindset of the middle class. Do not let that be you. Change your mind and you will change your means. Think like the rich, not to mimic their lifestyle, but to unlock your own potential. Your psychology is your first and most important fortune. Build it well.